What's up everyone, I'm Danny, welcome to my channel, and in this video I'm going to show you how to paint your Demigryph knights in a fun, quick and efficient way to make them look sick. I don't know about you, but to me, it feels like Warhammer's back, baby. Square bases, wheeling, charging, artillery dice, ranks, flanks, all the good stuff. Let's go! The correct shape for a base. Square base. If you can't tell, I've definitely jumped on the hype train for Warhammer The Old World. I'm super hyped, super excited to get my square bases back out again. But that means, obviously, I have to paint an army. So while we're all frantically rebasing, painting, list hammering, I thought I'd drop a quick video to show you how I'm gonna get my Empire army up to scratch in record time. Disclaimer, not record time. And I know the video says Demigryphs, but really you can use this workflow for pretty much any miniature in your collection. Right, I'll chuck up a list of the stuff I use on the screen, paints, etc. You can screenshot if you would like, but let's get into it.
We're starting out by priming with Wraithbone spray from Games Workshop. I'd never used this particular one before, and can I say, I'm in love. What a perfect off-white sort of colour for priming. We're going with a super simple black and white corded scheme. A neat balance between the black of Nuln and the white of the Knights of Varenna, the two main factions featuring in my eventual army. Already here we've run into one of the major shortcuts I'm taking here. The white sections we don't really touch again. Apart from some washes and weathering, they're done. For the Demigryph skin, I put on a relatively thin layer of a yellow tan, sort of a brown colour, in this case XV88 from Citadel, and we're not concerned here at all with the opacity. An uneven coat will kind of work better for the outcome we want. The Citadel contrast paint Wyldwood is an absolute joy for getting models done quickly. One thick coat over any sort of light colour prime and you have a very passable leather and sort of strap colour, which, might I add, will mostly be hidden and no one looks at it anyway, so don't worry about it. The next step is to block in the metallics with a darkish silver of your preference, and after this step, that's really one of the most fiddly bits done. For the feathers on the head and neck of our Demigryph and his tail as well, or her tail, didn't check. For the feathers, we mix up a 50-50 mix of medium and Gore-Grunta Fur. I ran out of contrast medium, so I just used Lahmian Medium, and I think any medium works. This is just to dirty it up a little, add some shadows, and make it overall less bright. All that's left here is some small details we need to chuck a base coat on. A nice yellow for the beak, which we'll come back to later on. Block in a fleshy colour for the tongue, do his cute little toenails in black, and as a little extra touch of complexity to draw the eyes towards the face of the model, we'll just do some loose freehand black and white checks. A useful tip here is to remember to follow the contours of the piece you're painting. In this instance, the curves of the cloth. Dead straight lines on a piece of cloth that's supposed to be blowing in the wind and stuff can look a little weird sometimes. Okay, so this next step here I kind of regret for our purposes with this paint job. It takes a little while and it really adds next to nothing to the final outcome. It's a fast and loose scratchy highlight on the fur just to add some texture and interest. You can do it if you want, it was fun, but if you're an absolute efficiency savage, skip it. I left it off the other Demigryphs I painted and it really wasn't noticeable at the end. After that, get your makeup brush out, some ivory paint, and we'll do a light pass over the feathery sections, just dry brushing just to heighten the contrast there a little bit. Looking good. We'll leave the mount there and move on to the knight himself. Don't worry, this is going to be almost the simplest paint job you'll ever see. He's clad in some badass gothic full plate armor, and so it's ultra easy to slap on some dark steel, leaving only a few details like shield and pants. We'll continue the corded motif on said shield and pants, and then base coat any other details we may have missed, like the haft of his halberd, and there you go, 3 colours. 2 if you don't count the priming, lightning fast.
Alright, we're up to the real MVP, the real magic. That miniature painting secret no one's told you about, or maybe everyone's told you about, but you still go, nah, but you should definitely use. Oil paints. So good. Why not oil? Try maybe a oil. You could do an oil. We oil, I oil. Vasna oil.
To set up for our oil wash, we're going to just hit the Demigryph and the Knight with a gloss varnish all over. This really helps for a few reasons. It makes the oil paint run exactly where we want it, in the creases and crevices and shadows. It prevents too much staining on the paint underneath, and usually gloss varnish is pretty durable, so it also means that when we go back to remove the excess oil paint, we won't be rubbing off any of the acrylic and ruining the work we've already done. Once that varnish is dry, it's time to get the oils out. For this particular project, I was envisioning a sort of deep orange-brown tint, so I'm mixing a bit of raw umber, Mars orange, and black. Have a muck around, see what works for you. Just remember, if you want to darken and dirty it down with black, only use a teensy bit. It goes a really long way. I'm just mixing up this wash with solvent and looking for a thick-ish consistency, kind of about the same as a GW contrast paint. I also take the opportunity to make 2 different mixes, so I can have some variation going on. Always a good thing. For the application, we're actually just going to smoosh it on there. There's not a lot of rhyme or reason to this. You definitely just want to cover the whole lot, varying which mix you use depending on what bits you want to be darker or lighter, until it looks like you really screwed the pooch, or Demigryph, as the case may be. I do the same with the night, and then I let it sit for a few minutes. This little period of time is really variable, depending on the results you want. For me, for this project, I want the oils to be relatively heavy and definitely stain a fair bit, but if you wanted a cleaner finish, and oil just in the recesses, don't let it sit for as long. That simple. Once they've ripened on the vine, take your Q-tip or makeup sponge or anything remotely spongy like I have here, and just start wiping the oil off in broad strokes. If you want to really remove more oil or you've let it dry a little bit too much, you can use a touch of solvent, but for today, we're just leaving these lovely stains and streaks of grime and brown and grit and dirt and stuff. After you're happy with the look, the oils will actually need to dry properly. So depending on where you live and what the weather's like and which ones you used, you're gonna wanna leave these bad boys at least overnight and probably for a day or 2. Go do something else. Go outside, ride a bike, I don't know, whatever it is you like doing. It's also a good time to get your bases ready for the models. This is a mud mixture of a few different basing products which I love, so much so I even made a video for it, which you can go sus for a more in-depth guide on this. Basically, mix up the stuff until you get this lovely consistency and smush it on the base. I like to do a really nice thick layer. If you're stingy, the flat base is going to show through and look bad and cheap, and you shouldn't do that because nobody likes bad looking bases or models. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. This little pause at my desk also gave me time to think about some other aspects of the models, like banners. This one caught my eye, and I sense a video on freehand coming up, so stay tuned for that.
Also, in the next 12 to 48 hours while you wait for your models to dry, you have time to deeply consider the pros and cons of subscribing to this channel. I look forward to reading your 500-word essays on the matter in the comments below.
Okay, after your oils are dry, you'll find they can sometimes be a little glossy still, so the first step back at it is to do a light coat of matte varnish. Easy done. I find the varnish I currently have is really matte, so for me I like to restore a little shine, create a little focus and visual interest by doing a quick pass of silver highlights, just on the most important areas: face, weapons, shield, front of chest armor, stuff like that. As always, do the same for the little nut. If you're watching this channel, I'm sure you've heard the old adage of faces and shields, so we're also showing a little love to our beaky boy here. We're putting in a few glazes of Gryph-hound orange, getting progressively smaller towards the tip of the beak, just for that nice little gradient. And then taking our ice yellow and a nice fine brush to do some scratches and edge catches, which will really draw the eye. And of course, then we paint the eyes. I used ivory as a base, sky blue for the iris, and a black pupil. Not too shabby. One of the best touches for any dirty, gritty, grimdark paint scheme is another low effort, low time investment for high reward step: pigment powders. If you haven't used these, you're living under a rock. Get out there, use them. They're so good. I'm using colors similar to my oil wash color to tie in with the overall sort of scheme: a bright rusty orange, a red brown, a dirt brown. And the application of these is super simple. Just use an old brush to dump little deposits of pigment in crevices and creases, and then once you're satisfied with the look, dab on some pigment fixer and wait for it to dry. Okay, for the last step here, we have to clip them off our little painty handles and stick them onto the base we prepared earlier. Time for the grand finale, the final part of the trifecta of grimdark upon which we are relying so heavily here: Mud Splatter. This can be done a few ways, but my favorite is the one I'm using here. Loading up a brush with a mud effect paint, and then blasting the paint off the bristles and onto the bottom half of the model with an airbrush. Yes, it's probably silly and a little risky, but just practice on some paper first to get the distances right and you'll be fine. Right. I think that's about the end of my patience with this. I do have an entire army to do after all, and perfection is the enemy of completion, or something like that. I'll definitely be doing another video on how to take this pretty basic scheme up to a much higher level for your characters and lords and stuff, models that you want to put a bit more time and effort into. So let me know if that's something you're interested in watching. If not, let me know what you want to see. For now, enjoy these glamour shots, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.